not to beat this into the ground, but one of the things that I was interested in talking to you about was the conception of the state and the idea that like the state is somehow like uniquely the source of man's problems when, it could easily be just as oligarchical in another system that maybe is true capitalism. I mean, do you see true capitalism as just solely the market operating, or do you see it like as a wider philosophy of like competing power structures?
True capitalism can be maintained only with competing power structures, in my opinion. That is like the very basis of capitalism is competition. It drives the prices down, it drives the wages up, it keeps everything moving smoothly. If something dies off, it gets replaced. Other people will replace it. It doesn't matter whether it's an individual or a group. The problem that I see is that governments end up, innately it seems, centralizing these businesses, forming corporations that are monopolistic, because these monopolies, when a business has a really good idea, makes a lot of money, they inevitably are going to, within a capitalistic system, and there's nothing wrong with it, seek to maintain that power. They will attempt to usurp any government that's associated with the system in which they exist. It's inevitable. That's not a problem so long as you have good trust busting and anti-monopoly laws and they're applied properly. The problem is that those rungs of government inevitably get stacked by those same wealthy individuals. I think one of the greatest sins of modern mankind within the United States is Citizens United. On this, I have to agree with literally the furthest left individuals in this country. It's one of the worst decisions we made. The formation of super PACs that are no longer beholden to any form of campaign laws other than they can't talk to a campaign is probably the worst thing that we've ever had as a country.
Well, okay, I don't have a problem with that in principle either, but I guess I'm asking it like maybe a more broad historical question. I mean, if you look at the rise of capitalism, right, out of the neo-feudal period into, David Ricardo, Adam Smith, the early merchant class that wanted to rebel against the state, capitalism comes as a revolutionary force to try to get rid of throne and altar. So it's an inherently anti-monarchical, anti-state movement. But what it then does is it erects the usury power of banking to co-opt the state. And you can read Carol Quigley's Tragedy and Hope, the famous geopolitical tome I've done a bunch of lectures on. He talks about how at the time of the Enlightenment, the scientific revolution, it was these big banking houses that were actually using usury, using capital on an international scale to make these kinds of movements to control the state. And so that's why I see, actually, if you're nationalistic, you have to also not be completely capitalistic, because capitalistic is inherently anti-border. Marx himself was for open borders. Now, I know that you don't agree with that. I'm just saying that
Marx was an anti-capitalist. Yeah.
No, he wasn't.
Marx was a capitalist, you're saying?
No. I'm saying when I did undergrad and grad school, I studied under a guy from the Frankfurt School, so I have direct Marxist-Stalic succession from the Frankfurt School. I'm not a Marxist, but no, Marx thought that capitalism was just a necessary phase, and that ultimately, just like libertarianism, it would lead to the withering of the way of the state.
I think the withering away of a state is not necessary. You do need a state, but it has to counterbalance with private industry. Those private industries have to be made to counterbalance one another, and everything needs to be limited. The Constitution at its rudiment should have applied to private entities too. First and Fourth Amendment, we see with big tech right now. We're having that discussion. I think is a